There is a text that I find ultimately moving in the Gospel of John, where we get this sense of recognition that that brokenness and failure is something that we experience consistently and in an ongoing manner. And in fact, the older we get, perhaps the more we experience a sense of failure. Whatever our successes, including material successes and achievements, we nevertheless experience failure on different levels. And that seems to be the constant condition in life. And Jesus is speaking to one of his disciples, the disciple John. And he says to him, "Very truly I tell you that when you were younger, you dressed yourself, and you went where you wanted to go. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hand, and someone else will dress you, and someone else will lead you where you do not want to go." And I think you recognize in that little parable, in that little story that Jesus tells, something of the stretch of life, something of the journey of life, where we begin confident, where we begin capable, where we begin full of energy and able to follow our dreams and follow our aspirations. But eventually, we learn that we can't do all the things that we would like to do. We can't save the whole world. And then we begin to become frail and older and more dependent on others. But that affirmation that Jesus gives his disciple John in that conversation, I think is in itself significant, because it allows us to, as we read ourselves into that story, it allows us to embrace that it's okay if we don't get everything right. It's okay if we have times in life when we feel less than able, less than capable, less than qualified. And what we need to do instead is rely on other people, embrace our friendship with other people, embrace those who are there to sustain us, to be with us, to recognize themselves as those who can walk that journey with us. Now, you might think, is that it's kind of a dark, sobering, and somber thought. But it turns out, I think, that when we recognize that sense of that all of us at some point, whether through illness or through the loss of a job or through a failure in a relationship, that we find ourselves really needy and in a place where we have to stretch our hand out and help and allow somebody to lead us onward. It turns out that that's actually something that helps us feel better about where we are. It turns out that to recognize that and to embrace that is exactly what we need to do in order to begin the work of rebuilding, of reconnecting, of reconciling. The philosopher Alan de Botton says, reminds his readers that in the Middle Ages and in the early modern period, a vital piece of interior design was a skull. I don't know whether you've ever seen these in old paintings, sort of medieval paintings, Renaissance painting, even into Victorian painting. You sometimes see a skull on top of a desk. And he says that was a vital piece of interior design. If you finish a beautiful desk, a mahogany desk or whatever, you put your quill pen, but you also put a skull on it. And the reason was that as we're doing your work, you could always look at the skull and you could think, I'm going to be like him someday. And the point was not to grow in despair, but rather precisely to focus on what's important. Because one of the things about the thought of death is that it doesn't make us think that life is meaningless. Far from it, it simply readjusts our priorities. And I think to the extent that we can recognize and allow ourselves to recognize failure in our lives, and to do that in the company of others, we begin to readjust to reframe our priorities and begin to work towards those things that are important to us, that are of value, the things that where we find meaning, and where we find ourselves most connected to God, to others, to the planet, and so on. There was a playwright called Dennis Potter. This is a very theatrical sort of evening, isn't it? Who tragically acquired a terminal form of cancer, and decided at the very end of his life, and by that I mean simply days before he died, to give a public interview with a well-known radio broadcaster. And the interview was published in The Guardian. His name was Dennis Potter. And he gave an interview about his experience of being at the very end of life and not regretting being in that position, or being in that very intense moment when he is recollecting life, when he is reconsidering the life that he has lived. But rather accepting that moment of brokenness as a particular kind of gift, as a life's gift to him, in order to refocus and reconsider what's important. And at that very point when he's about to die, this is what he says in the interview. He says, "The only thing I know for sure is the present tense. And that nowness becomes so vivid that I can celebrate life. Below my window, for example, there is at this season, the blossom is out in full now. It looks like apple blossom, but it's white. And looking at it, instead of saying, oh, that's nice blossom, last week, looking at it through the window, I see it as the whitest, frothiest, blossomest blossom that has ever been. And I can see it. The nowness of everything is absolutely wondrous." And I take from this that sense of recognition in someone else's life, in someone else who has come to a point of deep brokenness, deep loss, and in that sense, failure. A sense of connection, a sense of comfort in a strange way, that someone else who has experienced that has found it a reframing, refocusing experience in order to be able to connect with what he found most important, most valuable, and at that point, most life-giving. So I think God meets us in our failure, and God does so in order to lift us from failure, to reconnect us and remold us into the kind of people that he would like us to be. But now, before I move on to the third point in this talk, I would like to put a question to you for you to discuss very, very briefly with a person next to you, if you would like. And we'll gather back in a matter of 1 or 2 minutes, and we'll move on to point number 3. But the question I have for you then is there an area in your life where you feel confident about success? Feel confident about success, number 1. And number 2, what makes it success for you? What makes something success for you? Is there an area where you feel confident? An area that you feel comfortable talking about with someone next to you? And what makes that success? So we'll have a very brief 2-minute conversation. Make sure both people get a chance to say something, if they want to say something. And then we'll sort of gather together again. Okay?
Sorry, the question. I think that what makes me feel that I'm successful is meeting like-minded people who I can exchange ideas, and that makes me develop myself personally. That's considered as a success, you know.
Yeah, no, I have to say, I'm really struggling to I think that's really awful. Like, there must be
something that you don't feel confident about.
I don't feel like I'm pissing off, but really, I think for me it's really like personal. When I gave up the teaching, I didn't really want to.
Yeah, so you.
And I had some like mental health issues, and then I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah. So basically you quit your job and you feel better now.
Well, I feel better myself, but in the way other people see me, or I feel like they think she's failed because she had a good job. I had a good job. I had, career.
But that doesn't matter what you're thinking. What matters is what you think. And you need that you weren't happy in that job. So you quit your job and you are now doing something that you like. Or at least it's okay. What are you doing now?
At the moment, I am teaching very part-time, but I'm teaching in a charity, so I'm not.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm trying to get out. I'm going for all these job interviews, so I don't think that helps.
At least you get the first step.
I'm in the middle of it.
You change the job in order to finally find a new job that you like, the same as me.
And I think when you get there, then you can start feeling good about it. While you're trying to get there.
I'm very pleased to see that you're comfortable with one another and that you're comfortable having conversations with each other.
I don't really know.
And I wonder if there are 2 or 3 of you who would be comfortable saying something about what you, or an area in your life where you feel successful, and maybe tell us what makes a success for you. There are 2 or 3 of you who would want to say that, and if you do, please make sure that all of us can hear you. Bit of a funny layout here tonight. Anyone over here? Yes? Tell me your name, please.
I'm Sifra.
Sifra.
Yes.
Hello, Sifra.
I'm 18. I'm out there in London, and that's kind of the area that I feel successful. Because with 18, I come from like living at home with my parents all the time, and now I'm here on my own. I have to take care of 2 little kids. I got to do all these things on my own. Gotta be spontaneous and outgoing. And I used to not like challenges, but I've realised and I've discovered that I really enjoy being challenged, and I really can do things that I used to think I couldn't do. So in that area, I feel quite successful, as in getting to know myself better, and also doing new things and daring to do new things. So it's kind of an area.
Thank you for that. I think a lot of us would recognize that in ourselves. That's very good. Thank you. Anyone over here, maybe? Yes, please. Would you tell me your name?
I'm Trisha.
Trisha, hi.
I'm working part-time at the moment and doing a degree part-time as well. I spent a lot of my life not being very in control and doing what other people wanted me to. And a couple of years ago I decided, actually I'm not very happy with how life is, and I'm going to change how life is. And I very successfully and very thoroughly changed what life was like. And that is pretty good at success.
Thank you.
Don't mind making a point. Hi everyone, my name's Syed. Making a point into the room, underneath the mind, I'm a very honest guy. I've lived my whole life in the UK, and as you can see, I'm an ethnic minority, as you can see in the room. I need to explain it. So, in this city and in London, I've come across a lot of trials and tribulations, certain things like discrimination and that kind of stuff, like institutional racism, that kind of stuff within my English society. So I think there's a lot of things I've had to deal with. It's being like, I'm free to speak, we don't live in a dictatorship.
And is there something, Saeed, that you feel particularly good about?
The thing is, we don't live in a dictatorship, so we can kind of speak freely about it.
Is there something you feel good about, Saeed?
Speaking about success, what I feel good about is coming across those barriers, being an English literature graduate, but still facing institutional discrimination, but coming over and through it. My teachers used to say to me, actor, are you dead yet? They used to say that to me when they used to call the register. I don't think English people will ever understand. But I try my best I do what I do, and I don't even mind bringing it to the group. I just come over those hurdles, especially even with my dad. My dad came from a lot of hurdles in the National Health Service in the 1980s. He was verbally abused and stuff. But we come through it with trials and tribulations, but it is what it is. I just have to deal with it every day. But I'm an English literature graduate, and I think graduating in university was a powerful thing and a strong thing for me as an ethnic minority. But I've had a lot of prejudice in this country.
Thank you for that. We're gonna give someone else. But thank you. You've come through with a degree, and you've been able to do that in the face of a lot
institutional prejudice.
A lot of prejudice.
Yeah.
Thank you. Someone else, please. Do you want to say? This is a friend who just walked in today. Chloe is visiting with us today, and she would like to say.
I was telling my godmother, I think my success, I'm 25, is being honest, and I'm from a big family, we're 4 children, and every time my family lives away, so every time I meet them, this is my form of success, because they make me happy. If they're not happy, I'm not happy. So I think my success is always keeping strong relationships with my family, with the whole family, because it makes me go forward in life, and I think this is my own success, keeping those relationships and trying to have everyone happy, because I think it's the most important. If you're happy within your family, I think you can do whatever you like in life. I mean, in a way.
Thank you for that message, and again, it's something that all of us can, on some level, relate to. But it also picks up on the last point that I wanted to make, which is that God gives us one another, and the friendships that we can build with one another, with our families, with those we love the most, with those that we give ourselves to the most, in order to sustain us both in success, but also in those moments of failure. There's a song that I have brought along for us to sing that reminds us that actually it's in recognizing when we feel most failed, when we feel most broken, is when we recognize ourselves in someone else's life and in their own failure, and we recognize ourselves as being heard, that we begin to heal, to reconcile. So in the first point that I made about God meeting us in our failure, I turned to the Bible and where that brings us about God's own coming down to us to make himself one of us. And the second point about God lifting us from that, I turned to a playwright and a philosopher who reminds us that of the things that are important, the things that matter the most, and the way that failure refocuses things for us. It makes us ready to be reconciled, healed, put back together. But in this third point, I turned to the words of Elton John in a song called "Sad Songs Say So Much," where the point of the song is that you hear someone else in a song that seems to echo some of your own hurt, some of your own failure. And you say, I guess there are times when we all need to share a little pain, and ironing out the rough spots is the hardest part when memories remain. And it's times like these when we all need to hear the radio, because from the lips of some old singer, we can share the troubles we already know. So I wonder if we can practice that in singing this song together. I brought along song sheets, you won't be surprised to hear. And you'll find us on the lyrics to this in the back of the handout that I have for us, along with all the quotations and all the Bible verses.
We can sing. Oh, goodness.
I mean, this song is so old. It's long before some of you ever saw this world. But it still speaks truthfully. All right, so I'm going to play with my very sad little set of speakers here.
You don't have to sing, okay?
We'll just join in and sing along.
I don't know this.
There are times when we all need to share a little pain. And tying out the rough spots is the hardest thing, memories remain. It's times like these when we all need to hear the radio. Goes from the lips of some old singer. We can share the troubles we already know. Turn them on, turn on those sad songs. When all hope is gone, don't you tune in and turn them on. And reach into your room. Oh, just feel that gentle touch. All hope is gone. Sad songs say so much. If someone else is suffering enough to write it down, every single word makes sense. And it's easier to have those songs around. Inside is in the light, finally gets to you. It feels so good to hurt so bad. Tell not to sing the blues. Turn on those sad songs. When no hope is gone, why don't you tune in and turn them on? Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for playing along with us. And thank you for inviting me to say something about success, but also about embracing that failure, which is a place, something which the church makes available to us. And I want to leave you with that. Thank you.